Thank you for joining me today. I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about building the resilient leader in you. We often hear that we should be leading from the heart. This gives some people encouragement, and it gives other people heartburn. Today, we're going to hear about what the real meaning of leading from the heart means. And don't forget today's grounds for thought that includes a surprise for you at the end of the show. So stay tuned and hear what's brewing. Now let's meet our guest, who will talk about the real meaning of leading from the heart. His name is Bruce Cryer, and I'm going to bring him on screen so that you all can be watching his smiling face as I introduce his details, because Bruce brings more than 4 decades of experience in business innovation, optimal performance, and artistic expression to everything he does, through roles as diverse as actor, singer, dancer, writer, photographer, educator, mentor, business developer, marketing strategist, leadership coach, and executive. Whew. Bruce has gained valuable tools and lessons to help any leader in any phase of their growth, both professionally and personally. And I have to tell you, Bruce, this makes me feel so much better, because everybody says, Madelyn, you try to do too many things. But you see, some of us can.
We're addicted.
That's part of it too. His passion for, for the intersection between optimal health, human performance, and the heart-brain-breath connection found a home when he became a founding director of the acclaimed HeartMath Institute and later CEO of HeartMath for 11 years. Principles he developed around the connection between coherence, health, performance, and leadership have been taught to executives at Stanford University, Columbia, University of California, Berkeley, and Nanyang Polytechnic University in Singapore. You guessed it, his clients are all over the map of really big people. But I think another thing that's very interesting, well, I shouldn't say interesting, but it certainly piques my curiosity. Bruce is 14 years cancer-free and 13 years dancing and hiking on titanium hips. I think there's a story there. And he's also author of From Chaos to Coherence. All right. Well, our focus today is balance and flexibility to health as we pursue our careers. So let's dive in. Bruce, again, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you so much, Madelyn. This is a treat already, and I can't wait to see what unfolds.
All right. Well, I always ask teenagers to look at what I'm going to be talking about, and I ask them, what questions would you want to have answered? Here's their first question. What do you mean by leading from the heart? You talk about heart coherence rather than leading from the heart. Are they the same, and why should we care about it?
Jump right in. That's awesome. Well, I think I'm reminded as a parent of a daughter. I used to tell her, just sing with your heart. Just go back out on the field, just play with your heart. And so it's an expression, and lead with your heart is a similar idea. Really, it's very much the same. This same thing we were saying to the person that we said, just don't worry, you don't need to be nervous, just speak from your heart and everything will go fine. So leading from the heart is really the same idea, that there is a wisdom and intelligence that's within us, that's within all humans, that we sometimes don't trust because we want to be all mental and figure everything out and be all analytical, which is super important in business, but it also can miss the boat. I was reflecting on the years that I was CEO at HeartMath, and I tried to lead from the heart. I mean, here we are, an organization called HeartMath. You would think we're about care and efficiency and all that, and yes, we were. And we were rewarded for that effort because in the Bay Area where we were based, 3 years in a row, we were in top Bay Area workplaces, voted on by our own employees. And so it wasn't just evaluating were we leading from the heart, but we created a workplace where people felt valued, they felt cared for, they felt listened to. And in contrast to other Bay Area companies, we were near the top of that in that voting. So that's sort of leading with the heart put into action. So yes, I tried to be compassionate. Yes, I tried to be caring. Yes, I tried to be a really good listener. But it also was the policies we had. It was the health plan we had. It was the lifestyle that we allowed people to have and how they worked. All of that was leading with the heart.
Fabulous. Well, we've also heard that somehow between the heart and the brain, there is constant communication with each other, and that the effect is more than we ever realized. I'm curious about how that happens.
How the communication between the heart and brain happened, or you mean that we
Yeah.
got
What
so
does that
off?
mean? What does that mean? I mean,
Yeah,
intuitively, I know that's connected, right? I've got
yeah,
one body, so I know it's connected.
yeah.
But your research expands on that. I know it does.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Yes, and I think to your point, intuitively we get it. What we've been taught, or at least what we remember from science class. Maybe they were a little more nuanced than what we remember, but we remember the brain's the master computer, so it's giving commands to the entire body. So we would assume, oh, the heart's being told what to do by the brain, and
Yeah.
the brain's telling the liver what to do, and the lungs what to do, and everything else. Well, that model should have died about 50 years ago with mainframe computers, because in reality it's distributed intelligence, and in reality there's a constant two-way communication going on between heart and brain. Heart is sending information north to the brain, brain's responding to that and sending information back south to the heart and throughout the body. So in fact it's this very holistic network of information being shared all throughout the body. The brain is the aggregator, and
Ah,
it gives a lot of instructions, but it's not the sole source of information, not at all. And there are four pathways with which the heart is able to communicate with the brain, four different pathways. And the one of the pieces of data most striking, I think, is that the heart sends information. It's called afferent. Nobody needs to know that. Afferent meaning going upwards to another source. The amount of information going to the brain is around 4 times as much as is coming from the brain to the heart. 4 times more, because the heart is much more than a pump. It's an electrical system. It's a magnetic system. The pressure within our system is impacted by the heart. There's all these forms of communication that the heart is doing. And so it's going on all the time. So in our early model at HeartMath, we used to talk about, it's not about getting rid of the head. It's not like the brain's the bad guy. The brain's got way too much control. There's no checks and balances on it. And so it needs to be a joint venture, because the reason we intuitively know to tell our kid, go just sing with your heart, we don't mean go sing with your pump. We mean that part of us, that's who we really are. It's not just the smart part, but the caring part too, the loving part too, the part that can have the commitment to do things. That's the heart too. So it's a joint venture is really what we're after.
yeah. Well, in some of the things that I've read, the brain actually takes 4 times the amount of energy to do what it does than the rest of the body. So one always assumes that it must be the most important, right? Because it takes all this energy. And what you're saying is it can't do anything without the information coming up from the rest.
Well, there's another interesting statistic. Yeah, exactly. It's an information dependent system. It's designed to make decisions based on the information it's receiving.
Mm,
Computer's not going to just sit there and start doing things unless it's given a command, or I mean, now with AI, of course, but something had to start that as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
But part of what we learned early on with these two systems, the heart system, the brain system, is that when we think of the heart as an electrical organ, because it produces an electrical signal, the EKG, the electrocardiogram, is a measure of the electricity produced by the heart. A lot of us don't think, oh, okay, that I guess that makes sense. Well, the heart produces an electrical signal and a magnetic signal, but the electrical signal produced by the heart, every time the heart beats, there's electricity is generated. Kaboom! It's not just a rhythm. It's not just a pulse. It's an actual burst of electricity. It's being created in that moment. That signal is around 40 to 60 times stronger than the electricity produced by our brains.
Whoa.
So one of the secrets of how you even measure brain waves is that you have to filter out the heartbeat, because the heartbeat is so much more powerful electrically and magnetically 40 to 60 times stronger in terms of the amplitude of the signal. That to detect brain waves, you've got to kind of filter out that noise. We can't hear the brain because the heart's pounding so loud. So that's yet another example of, all that's going on between these systems. So getting them in sync, getting them to operate in alignment, and the term we use, back to your teenage question earlier, heart coherence, is when those systems are now aligned. So instead of there being some kind of an imbalance where the heart is screaming or the brain's screaming and they're not coordinated well or communicating well, that's the goal of the work of HeartMath.
Well, I think it leads very naturally to my next question, which is, okay, now that we know this, so how do we really, I don't want to say maximize the system. How do we optimize this phenomenon that's within us?
Well, some of it is sort of what you'd expect in a sense that we've been told, whether it's meditation teachers or just high performance athletes, that you have to slow down the scurrying mind, the frantic mind, in order to make a good decision. We intuitively know that when we're frantic or caught up, we might say to ourselves, you know what, I need to go take a walk right now. I got to clear my head. That's even the expression.
Yeah.
And we don't literally thinking, oh, it's convoluted brain waves that are going crazy up there. But yes, if we were measuring, yes, there's chaos to some degree, which is why it's hard to make a clear decision. So a lot of our work was, how do we maximize this system? And so slowing down the frantic mind or learning how to regulate out of control emotions are part of the picture. Just like a doctor would say, just like a parent would say to a child who fell off their bike and they're crying and they're kind of out of control, and we intuitively say, oh, it's okay, sweetie, just breathe a little bit now and you'll be fine. Just breathe a little bit, just slow it. We intuitively know that the person that's frantic needs to be slowed down a little bit. And so that's part of what we're saying, is that for these systems to work optimally, we have to take control. If it's just a heart racing out of control, if it's just a brain that can't shut up because it's thinking about this worry and that worry, and if they're operating like that, just like a car, if the car is going 120 miles an hour, you're in a lot more danger than a car that's doing 20 miles an hour, right? You need to do 120 sometimes, but one tiny wrong turn at 120, it could be curtains. At 20, you got a lot more leeway, right? Mm. So it's not that different in terms of our internal systems, but it's not just the slowing down, because of course, early on as HeartMath, as we were teaching this in health context, particularly with EMTs, with surgeons, they'd say, I can't go too slow. I'm a surgeon. I need to be sharp. The fear was, if the message is just slow down, that's not a good message for an EMT that is trying to save somebody who may be having a heart attack or is caught in a fire. So we're not just saying only slow down. We're really saying learn how to operate your system so you can perform in a very coherent way, in spite of it being a chaotic situation, like an operating room could be, or the scene of an accident like EMTs would face. So it's staying coherent, it's staying balanced, it's staying sharp, which is easy when the environment is quiet or you're on retreat. But it's a whole other story when you're in the midst of a chaotic, and I'm sure you're a coach. You have worked with tons of leaders, some of whom intuitively get this, and they're amazing. Like, how do they do that? How can they be so calm in the midst of what's causing everybody else to be, freaking out and hypercritical? But what do you notice in terms of your experience and with this concept?
Well, I'll tell you what comes immediately to mind, and that's the leaders who feel that they have to, what's the right word? They want to shake up the system. And I've watched, it's the exact reverse of what you're talking about. They want to create chaos in their group because they want people to be on edge, because they think they'll be edgier or more competitive. And of course, creativity goes out the door.
Right.
It's gone. And what you get is a lot of groupthink. And that's the kind of situation where I just want to run, because I don't want to deal with that. But of course, as a coach, you have to deal with it.
Exactly.
And you have to help them see that situation, and do they really understand what they're affecting when they
Yeah,
do it?
it's funny, isn't it? The old-fashioned leaders who think that agitating something will get you motivated. Yes, it motivates you to maybe consider getting your resume together and finding another position. I think these days, a lot of us, no matter what generation we're in, are kind of like, really? That's really the mode you're still using? We haven't learned anything still, really? Okay. Sorry, I'm not
Yeah,
interested in that modality anymore. I can motivate myself without a stick,
yeah,
without thread.
yeah.
Yeah, and biologically, I guess that's part of the point, is that HeartMath learned that when we are feeling stressful emotions, whether that be feeling threatened, whether that be fear, anger, hostility, any emotion of that ilk,
Hmm.
even lower level ones like anxiety or depression, because the heart's involved and we can see how the heart is beating in a stressful emotion, and it looks very different than how the heart beats when we're
Yeah.
happy or joyful or caring or feeling appreciative in our work. And what we learned years ago, the early 90s, was that the chaotic rhythms that happen in every human heart when we're feeling on edge, that signal, remember, there's a very powerful signal beating away in there, 40 to 60 times stronger than what's up here.
Yeah.
That signal is being fed up there. So the brain is receiving a chaotic signal when we're highly stressed out. So how good a job do we do in our brains when we're feeling all that stress? Well, that's when we make the short-sighted decision. That's when,
Mhm.
in the knee-jerk reaction, that's when we say something at the exact wrong time. And now, for the next 6 months, we're in jail with our spouse, or the colleague never forgets that we said that, even if we apologize,
Even
because of the way we said it, or that particular language that just they can't forget. So this is kind of what happens. So we realized we have to learn how to organize this system, because they're actually designed to work together. Guess what? The brain works so much better when the heart's feeding it really nice stuff, and the heart's working so much better when they're in sync, when they're
yeah.
coherent.
Oh, I get this vision in my mind of this analytical thing up there getting a certain feed of data, and all of a sudden stuff comes in like this, and it's like, what do you want me to do next, first, etc.
Yeah.
I have this incredible feeling of, okay, I better take this into account now and just think about it, because I don't want to have that situation going on. Well, I am really curious though. The Your company was called, or the organization is still called HeartMath. How did you come up with that name?
Well, I have to give credit where credit's due. It's the founder, a man named Doc Childre, who came up with that name. And when I first heard it, I was a bit, really? Not sure I get it. And as he talked about it, part of the way he would describe it was that the heart has been known for millennia, and revered for millennia by every culture of the world. Every religion of the world reveres the heart. It doesn't say, "Oh, don't play with your heart." It doesn't say, "Keep your heart at home." As a man thinketh is in his heart, so is he. That's pretty fundamental to life. So the heart was revered. And yet in modern time, the heart was sort of dumbed down to being just a fantastical pump. And
Mm-hmm.
that concept coming along in the 19th century. But don't think it's anything more than that. Yes, it's an incredible pump, but it's not wise, it's not courageous, it's not intuitive. What are you talking about? That's all up here. And that was sort of the belief that in the West, at least, we began to believe. And so he believed that there was this fundamental imbalance in how we think about the heart that needed to be addressed, but it could only be really addressed through more actual scientific research, not just more spiritual philosophy. That already exists. There's already all the spiritual philosophies saying the heart is wise, the heart is courageous, the heart is what you need in times of trouble and loneliness and despair. It's not
Mm-hmm.
secondary.
It's
So
the
we've already
healer.
got all that in all the books,
Yeah.
but it's not translating into companies or health systems, et cetera. So he said what we need is a practical system that's based on mainstream science, not alternative science, that people who are in positions of power can respect. And he chose to call it math. He could have said heart science. Like some people would say, why didn't you call
Mm-hmm.
it heart science? Well, because that's too ordinary.
Yeah.
Heart math, you don't forget it. You may
It,
not like it, but you don't forget it.
It stopped me immediately the first time I heard that heart math. What could it be? And I kept thinking about it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he's right.
And one way to look at it was like the simple equations for living better. Like if I do this, then that happens. If then statements in math, or 1 + 1 = 2. If I do this behavior with this person, it will produce a better outcome.
Mm,
So that's the math of heart math, if you will.
thank you. Thank you. Well, let's talk about some of those techniques, those behaviors that you just referenced so casually. What are some you've mentioned listening, being attentive. Um, are there other things that one should really think about and bring into their lives?
Yes, there are, and I think one of the most fundamental, and in fact, as I was formally teaching heart math for more than 20 years, and I continue to, but I'm not inside the organization anymore. It's to help us regulate our own physiology first. So take charge of ourselves first. Similar to the instruction on an airplane, put the mask on yourself first before you put it on anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parents have learned that if they've flown a few times. So in order to create a system that's more unified, that's more coherent, more aligned, we have to take charge of certain out of control emotions, a racing heart, etc. And so a very simple way to do this is to simply bring your attention to the area of your heart. And when I say bring your attention, I mean right now you could focus your attention on your big toe and wiggle it, and you'd be focused on your toe. You could focus on your right knee, and you could just notice, oh yeah, there's my right knee. So we're focusing here in the area of the heart, not on the organ so much. But in that focusing, then you begin to breathe. I mean, you're breathing anyway, but you're breathing now while focusing your attention in this area. And so you breathe in kind of slowly for about 5 seconds as you breathe in. And then you breathe out slowly for about 5 seconds as you breathe out. And it can be 4, it can be 3, but the intention is to regulate your breath. And part of what we understood in our early research is that 5-second cycle, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, synchronizes the heart and the breath. And we talk about how important the heart and brain are to be aligned. Even more fundamental in a way is the heart and the breath. Because if the heart and the breath are not synchronized, we are also chaotic. So the 5-second rhythm is the rate that science had discovered way before heart math came along. That is highly efficient. So the heart and the breath are now synchronized. As we do that, we're gaining control over two very fundamental systems in our body, the heart and the breath, both of which operate automatically. When you woke up this morning, you didn't think to yourself, well, let's see, I've got around 12,000 breaths to spend. That's a real number. That is a real number. 20,000 in an entire 24-hour period at one average. You don't think about it. It's automatic, thank goodness. And yet there'll be at times you'll say to yourself, I need to slow down my breath right now. I'm a little bit anxious. I'm a little bit too worked up. I need to I just need to breathe. Or maybe there's a medical thing going on and you realize, oh, I'm getting myself tense. I need to just kind of slow down my breath. So the breath clearly is both automatic and within our control. HeartMath came along and said, guess what? So's the heart. The heart is beating on its own. You don't tell your heart the right rate for the day. Let's see, it's a Monday. I'm going to be more amped up. Maybe about 85 or 90 today. You don't do that. Your brain's handling it all for you. But HeartMath came along and said, but you can control it. You can control the pattern. The heart can be beating like an earthquake when you're not controlling it, when you're just allowing yourself to be triggered by this, triggered by that, overwhelmed, etc. But you can control it. And that's where the breath and the heart together are like this very powerful team. So this concept that I just shared, focusing around the heart, breathing in for about 5 seconds and out for about 5 seconds, it's a fundamental heart math technique. And it's kind of at the back, at the foundation of just about everything that heart math, and those of us who use the term now, heart coherence, that we believe is that getting those systems aligned, the heart and the breath, is fundamental to gaining a sense of, I can control this stuff going. I don't have to just be a victim of the boss, the victim of the alert on showing up on my phone. I don't have to just be, there I go again, getting annoyed with so-and-so. you start to learn, I can control my breath, I can control my heart. And those are two systems that once you are able to regulate them more, a lot can change.
This is exciting for me to hear, because what it says to me is that I now have an entry point to begin to calm my mind as well as the rest of my body.
Exactly.
And those times when it's important to be creative, it's important to be cooperative and collaborative, because that always takes more energy to do those kinds of things. This is telling me, now I can conserve my energy by keeping things calm, so that I can then really do these exciting things that that moves me forward or moves the world forward, etc. I think there's another piece to it, though. In your book, you say presence generates and increases coherence. Maybe that's what we've been talking about. How does this, is it happening the way you just described?
Well, so for one thing, that's not all. So in other words, it's not just a matter of bringing the focus here and then breathing in a steady rhythm with the focus around the heart. It's more like, as a singer, I was told certain things you have to do, but that's like a certain scales or certain humming. But I didn't go out on stage and just hum. The point of the practice was so that I could actually perform at a high level. So this technique is very fundamental, because it's so easy for our mind to just take over, or our emotions, which may already be frayed. Let's say you're getting over I've had 2 consecutive bacterial infections, thank you very much, during the last 3 months. My system is not fully recovered. I don't have either infection, but I was heavily drained. Twice I was on major courses of antibiotics. Twice I was on courses of steroids.
Mm.
And every now and then I'll kind of lie down and say, I'm exhausted. And I don't look exhausted, right? I mean, I've got good energy right now, but on the other hand, so my point being, just the process of bringing the focus back here, activating our own heart, kind of being mindful of that, being conscious of the breath, starts a process where we become more conscious of our breath more of the time. We become more conscious, not just of the physical heart, but of how we want to feel. So what I found, so there's like a step 3. If focus on the heart is one step, breathe in a steady 5 second in, 5 second out rhythm is step 2. Step 3 is now focus on gratitude or appreciation or joy. I just had this wonderful gift. When the postman knocked loudly on the door, as I told you before we started, for the 50 cents postage that was due, it was a little envelope for me from a place in New Jersey where I had a storage unit until the end of April, and I closed it down. And somehow, as I was moving things out, a little folder of photos fell out. I didn't know that had happened. And the storage unit place called me, and they said, we think these are yours, and can we send them to you? I said, yes, of course. I don't remember this happening. I didn't see anything fall.
Yeah.
And I got the gift of opening them up today. It was my daughter at age 2. It was my daughter at age 3. It was my daughter at age 7, my daughter at age 12, my brother who passed away a few years ago, my nephew who looked about 12 and he's now 50. And I was kind of sitting there sobbing and thanking that storage unit supervisor who found it on the floor and thought, that man that was very caring about his unit, these are probably his. So my point in that story is that I was overwhelmed by gratitude. I took a picture of the pictures, sent them to my daughter, and said, "Guess what I just got?" And she was quite delighted. And so, see how this kind of wave of positive emotion took over. So at HeartMath, we learned we have to initiate that. We have to, during our days that are full of stress and full of things not going our way, we have to find things to appreciate even when it's hard. So back in the very early days of HeartMath, 30 plus years ago, when we were teaching people, focus through the heart, you focus in the area of the heart, breathe as you're breathing through your heart, and then focus on something you appreciate, I would focus on my daughter. And when we first started doing it, she was about 3 or 4. And so, and here I was today seeing these photos I hadn't seen in 5 or 6 years at least,
Mhm.
reminding me of what she was. I mean, she's still an incredible woman now, 37. But so the emotions, the care, the compassion, the presence, the ability to, in the midst of chaos,
Mhm.
realize life has not ended. We're still here. We will get through this. That's the presence that once we kind of can focus on where we're core, where our core is, and the breath is a very powerful way to enhance that, then we can be more present and more able to, as a leader, respond with compassion or with clarity or with true leadership and guide those that are needing direction from us. But we
Mhm.
have the presence to do that.
I I so appreciate the word appreciation. It's I've often thought, well, okay, gratitude is the answer, but I think in one of our early conversations, you used that word appreciation as well, and I realized that is a refinement of gratitude, uh, because you can appreciate many things for which that has no relationship necessarily to you. That you can be grateful that it's in your life. It may not be. It may not be important or relevant at all, and yet you can appreciate, say, the beauty of it or
Yeah,
appreciate the warmth of it. I
yeah,
like the fact that I can expand that understanding because that's so much easier to attain. I think anyway.
exactly, exactly. It's somehow more personal, I think. Like even the word, the sonics of the word appreciation.
Yeah,
It has a nice sound, doesn't it?
it does. It does.
Gratitude is also a powerful sound, but it's strong. It's more, I don't know how to describe the difference, but it's something about appreciate. It feels expansive.
It,
I
it,
I appreciate you.
it
I
is
am grateful for you.
interesting.
Doesn't quite do it in the same way, you know.
As you said that, I focused on the sound, and gratitude is very much in the throat, whereas appreciation is almost in the whole head. Has to say it.
Yeah.
Amazing how our bodies give us signals like that. Mm. All right, you are you've mentioned already that you were a dancer, and I know that today you also practice yoga and tai chi, or maybe you don't, but I know you did. Um, Talk a little bit about how that has influenced your life because you've had some difficult times physically, and I'm always curious as to how you got through them. I mean, my focus is always on resilience. What was it that carried you through them?
Well, it's hard to separate the dancing from the singing because first I became a singer and somebody acknowledged me that I had a potentially good voice and decided to give me the lead role in the High School Musical because he thought I could do it singing wise. I did not audition for that part. I was just told I was playing the lead role. But in the run up to that show, which was like 8 or 9 months away, there was going to be another show around holiday time of like a Broadway review, like to be some dance numbers and some Christmas song and some opera and all kinds of things. And they wanted me to do a couple solos to kind of get used to singing in front of an audience. Well, they also were auditioning for these dance numbers, and there was pretty slim pickings of male dancers at my high school, like there were none. So, I was pretty coordinated athlete, and it looked like it would be fun. So I got into all the dance things. I didn't have some like Rudolph Nureyev part. I was just doing jazz dance or waltzing or whatever. But I took to it like right away. Like, oh, this is fun. I enjoy this. The jazz is really cool. Oh, it's like West Side Story. Oh, this is fun. And so little by little, I discovered a love for dance. And when I went to the Oberlin Conservatory, where I was for 3.5 years, I was learning to sing the classical repertoire, but I was also learning to dance in all kinds of wild ways, contemporary, improv, all kinds of things. And I found that at a certain level of my own freedom, I feel like I'm a dancer. Like right now, it would not be hard for me to just, here we go. We're dancing. And I wouldn't be quite so quick to just start singing. So, and for me, as I went through the realization I would need to get both hips replaced, and this is not minor surgery, this is major surgery, and mine were 3 months apart. I did not have any expectation I would ever dance again.
Wow.
At that point, I was in such pain just walking, let alone hiking. And I lived in Northern California where you can't go far without an incredible place to hike. And I was hiking all the time. And so but I didn't aspire to that. It was just like, if I could not have the pain, if I can get in a car again without having to lift my leg literally into the car every single time,
Mm.
because I did not have the strength to lift my own leg.
Wow.
And I was in my 50s. I mean, I wasn't like 90 or something. And so I didn't have any big aspiration, but a few months after the second surgery was complete, and I was rehabbing, doing all the physical therapy and exercising and walking, and especially a lot of walking up hills to kind of rebuild some strength and all. But again, I was not thinking dance, not at all, zero. And I didn't regret that. It was just kind of like, I just want to get feeling like a guy that can walk up hills again, you know. And a friend of mine, bless his heart, I will never forget his invitation. He invited me to go to this 2-hour live improv dance session. And my first question was, which part of double hip replacement did you miss? 2 hours of I have just had both hips replaced. It's not that long ago. And anyway, he calmed me down, and I put my gun away, and we went, and I was exhausted at the end of 2 hours, but I loved it. And I was surprised how much my body wanted to do. And I did it several times over the next couple of months. And little by little, my body wants this. My body is craving this. It's years since I had even thought of dancing, let alone was kind of impaired to do it. And I discovered that as I was able to move in ways I hadn't moved in 20 years at least. And I was so amazed this was happening and so thrilled, and like, I didn't see this coming. Wow. And I would be like on the dance floor with some beautiful track of music playing, and I would be in tears, tears streaming down my face. Just, I can't believe I'm getting to dance again. So it was a huge, huge part of my healing from the cancer and I had staph infection in my blood, and let alone the arthritis in both of my hips. Huge part of that healing, but also I'd lost my mother in that time period. My marriage had ended. I decided to step down as CEO of HeartMath. A lot was changing in a short amount of time, and the dance helped me ground somehow. It helped me get in my body. You're going to get through this. You have already survived amazingly, and now it's like kind of icing on the cake, only it's even better than the cake.
What strikes me about that is that you had a friend who was observing that and knew the thing you needed and was there to help you do it. In resilience, we know that you've got to have social support, especially when you're going through really tough situations. But what the grace to actually have a friend who saw inside and said, this is what's needed. That's fabulous.
It's interesting you use the term grace. He is that. He is a composer. He's won multiple Emmys. His name is Gary Malkin. I want to give Gary his due. One of the most famous albums he ever did was called Graceful Passages. And it's 7 or 8 minute pieces with beautiful speaking voices of very well-known people, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it's all about the end of life. And so he conducted this huge orchestra with these gorgeous pieces with voices about the passages of life. And he won all kinds of awards for it and whatnot. But it's all about grace. How do we find grace in the midst of challenges we did not ask for consciously?
Yeah.
Grace.
This has been so uplifting, but I want to just do a quick touch on what is it that people are doing today where they're really sacrificing this health, this sense of moving to facility to do what they want to do. Have you looked at that? What is it that people are doing that gets them into a trap that they can't seem to get out of?
Boy, there's so many factors. It's hard to pinpoint one. I think it's often a confluence of many factors. Some of it is pressure to be conventional, to kind of follow the path that society says is the correct path. I mean, I'm of the belief that we are designed to continue to give birth to different parts of ourselves all through our life.
Oh,
We obviously do that when we're young. I mean, when we're babies, we literally are learning to see clearly. We're literally learning to eat on our own. We're literally learning to walk. There's all kinds of capacities that are being born in us. And that's really obvious first 20 years of our life. And then I think we accept the myth that, and then it stops. And we don't keep learning. It's like, why would you keep learning? Now I got responsibilities. Now I got a job. I got a family. I've got things who has time to grow and learn and all that. And God forbid you should be questioning those things come your mid 40s or your 50s, and then people accuse you of having a midlife crisis. And in my opinion, that's not what's going on at all. It's the part of them that wants to keep growing and keep birthing new parts of themselves or dusting off old parts. I never dreamed, as I just told you, I would ever dance again. That I could dance again was a rebirth of a part of me I thought was gone. And I was okay with that. I had said goodbye. And yet here it was. And so to me, it's an incredible opportunity. And yet most people don't think that's a possibility. It's like, oh, I'm not creative. I'm not like my mother or my brother. I can't do that kind of thing. Just give me one thing to do. And they accept limitation. And so it's very hard to pull out of that, because when there's so many things in life, and I think COVID was huge in this regard, so many things that we had no choice over. And I'm not just talking about vaccination, but just all the aspects of what we had to deal with, right? But there's so many things, and there's so many concerns that people have that it can be absolutely overwhelming. Like, well, where do I start? I can't affect global warming. I can't affect all the solar activity that's going on. At least they gave us a good slideshow, a good night show. Those who could, in areas that could see it. But that's because of major magnetic storms on the sun going on, some of which could ultimately be dangerous. So it's like there's so many things to worry about. I think it gets really overwhelming. And so you get trapped in the fear, and you don't have any way to stop. And you don't even notice how fast you're going all the time from this to that, this word to that word. And that's where it comes back to when you asked me earlier, where do people start? And I said, it starts by just focusing here. If you have to put your hands over your heart when you're by yourself, do that to remind yourself, wait a minute. In fact, I used to do this, Madelyn, you'd appreciate this. Feel free to try this if you're leading a workshop.
I'm going to do it right now as you do it.
I would ask people, okay, everybody, let's say I had a room full of 50 people in a conference room, and they weren't familiar with the space. They weren't used to it. And I'd say, so everybody close your eyes and now point north. Well, all hands were like different because nobody really was sure where north was. So some people would get lazy and they would point like this. Like, okay, that doesn't count. You can't just point up and call that north. So I'd say, okay, now close your eyes again. And now everybody just point to yourself. Guess where the fingers go? About 90, I've done this all over the world, multiple cultures, multiple countries. 99% of all the fingers point at the chest, center of the chest, not up here. The rest of them go up here somewhere in the head.
Yeah.
Very few compared to how many go down here. So somehow we intuitively know this is the core of me. And they're not pointing to their physical heart, by the way. The question was, point to yourself.
Yeah.
But here's where they point. So there's something about the focusing on the heart again, not just the organ, but the part of us that the Bible, the Quran, all the great poets, saints, St. Francis Assisi, who I'm very aligned with in certain ways, all about the heart, care for animals, care for nature, care. And so there is this kind of intuitive knowing, but we have to do something about that. So we have to spend time focusing on the things we're grateful for, just laying out those photos of my daughter, getting the picture just right, then editing the photo so it looked better than how it came through on my camera, then sending it to my daughter. I was filled with so much joy. I didn't have this. This wasn't on my to-do list for the day. So this was a wonderful surprise, started by the loud, insistent knocking on the door by the postman.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I can hardly believe how much time has gone by. This conversation has been so energizing in many ways. I'm curious, though. We've already decided that you're coming back. We're going to have you on next week. What question should our audience be considering in anticipation of the fact that we're going to continue this conversation, but we're going to continue it in a particular way, which is really reinventing who we are? What question?
So that's a terrific question. So given that the topic will be kind of the reinvention of ourselves, I would start by simply asking, what do I need to reinvent? Is it something about my health? I'm getting some signals that my health's not where I want it to be. Is it something about my relationships? There's too much friction in important relationships right now. I need to do something different. Is it the job? Is it the career? Is it all of the above? So reinvention does not mean throwing out everything that we've ever been and ever done and just starting over. Products get reinvented all the time, but it's not, let's get rid of that one and just they get upgraded. So reinvention is also means upgrade. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got to throw out everything and just start over. So it's like, where is the need? Where is the most friction? Where is the most distress? And where clearly I'm allowing this to go on. No one's forcing me to do. I'm allowing this to keep happening. Where could it make the most difference?
Great. All right. They've heard it now. Think about where it is what they want to be thinking about, and what needs to be reinvented, like new and improved, as you talked about products. Where do you want to be new and improved? All right, Bruce, thank you so much. This has been, for me, a very exciting conversation and a very informative one. So thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Madelyn. A real joy.
Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself. Bruce Cryer was co-author of the book From Chaos to Coherence. This book begins with a quotation from Teilhard de Chardin, who wrote, "Someday, after we have mastered the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness the energies of love. Then, for the second time in the history of the world, men will have discovered fire." Desjardins is one of my heroes. His writings open a new perspective on the creator of expansiveness and wholeness of the universe, of our role in it, and even of a continuous evolution. For me, it was life-changing. So when a book began quoting Desjardins, I knew there would be gems within it. Today's guest, Bruce Cryer, is an author of this book, and our conversation explored what it means to lead with the heart, to harness the energies of love. Now, don't get confused with the word love. The love that is referred to is the life force. He said at one point, every religion of the world reveres the heart. It doesn't say, oh, don't play with your heart. It doesn't say, keep your heart at home. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That's pretty fundamental to life. So the heart is revered. And yet in modern time, the heart was sort of dumbed down to being just a fanciful, fantastic pump, unquote. If you think only of a fantastical pump, it is no wonder that today we want to do everything from the analytical side. Knowing that the heart has been regarded with so much respect by cultures around the globe and over centuries of thinking, it is necessary to find a science-based approach to explore the true value of the heart to leaders. Like Desjardins, the book looks at the wholeness of the human system. When I was learning public speaking, I was often told, don't be nervous, just speak from the heart, everything will be fine. What is intuitive to people just needed some scientific justification. Let's look at some of that. Fact one, As Cryer notes, there is an intense connection between the heart and the brain, with 4 times as much information being transmitted to the brain as from the brain sending it to the heart. This simple fact helped me see the power of leading from the heart. I mean, clearly, if nothing else, you are working for more information when you lead from the heart than if you really only solely depended on the brain. Fact 2. The heart produces an electromagnetic signal that is 40 to 60 times stronger in terms of the amplitude than the brain's. When he mentioned this, I began to understand why some people can enter a room and you know they're there even if your back is turned to them. Fact 3. High-performing athletes learn how to slow down what Cryer calls the scurrying mind. They do that in order to perform at their best, to make good decisions at every moment. Fact 4. Bringing the brain and heart into coherence increases individual coherence and means we spend less energy to maintain ourselves. Our thoughts and reactions become more efficient. That means that listening and collaboration, which takes a lot of energy, now has more energy to support them. And it is easier to keep focus and be productive, and feelings of stress are less. These changes are reflected in significant improvements when measured. And you can read them, by the way, in the book. Putting just these 4 points together, a leader can instill anxiety in an entire team by not controlling his or her own feelings of anxiety or fear or anger, because the signals coming from their hearts are heard by the others in the room. I've personally watched leaders who consciously created high stress in the team for any number of reasons. One particularly onerous one felt they had more control if everyone feared them. I watched adults shut down, intelligent adults shut down, fold their arms, lean away from the leader. They remained silent when asked about ideas for the next solutions to the issues on the table. Now that I see the evidence of impact, I know that I must take control of myself before convening a meeting, especially when the issue is critical. If I'm nervous about something, feel the company is entering more risk, I need to calm myself first before I infect the rest of the team if I want them to give me the best ideas. As I read and listened to Bruce, I began to make connections with my work in resilience. If knowing who you are is a quality of highly resilient people, a quiet mind helps you examine your life and thoughts with appreciation and deepening understanding as a result. Highly resilient people are curious. They're always learning. Being coherent opens the mind to learn and even to pursue its curiosity. They actually nurture their curiosity as they seek answers. Highly resilient people have strong social support. The question is always, how do you take control of this? Have a quiet mind. Be in control. I recommend that you watch the video again, as Cryer talks about the breath, but I'm sure you remember it too. The impact on teams and whole organizations becomes so much clearer after reading this book. The book is filled with evidence of what is happening in the body and its impact on our social environments. You'll just have to read it. Is there an area in your life where you have less control than you would like? Maybe you feel like a victim and you can't find the words. Take a moment to appreciate the amazing systems within you that only want you to be healthy and happy. And consider if you're ready for a reinvention. The conversation continues next week when Bruce Cryer returns to move the conversation from cohesion to reinvention. From Chaos to Coherence by Doc Childra and Bruce crier. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show and that you learned something from it. And of course, if you want to continue the conversation with me, just send me an email or just go to my website and schedule a conversation. I'm Madelyn Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock the resilient leader in you.